Welcome back to Nobby on Cars. We're into November. I know, where did the year go? But I was just thinking this morning, what about 2026? If you are considering ordering a new car, it's probably a bit of a minefield in terms of electric, petrol, plug-in hybrid, what new stuff is coming, what should you be considering? Is there a particular model into 2026 that you might want to hold off until that gets here? Because let's face it, it's a lot of money and there's limited time and you can't go to every single showroom and every single dealership. So with the knowledge I have of testing so many cars, hopefully I can help you from this video decide what should be on your shortlist for 2026. Let's get started. We have the Hyundai Ioniq 3. They haven't officially said that's what it's going to be called, but I had a little studio preview of a concept car. We may not get too much information about this car into early 2026, but it's a big model. It's kind of the smallest, apart from the Inster and things like that. Fully electric will be low to mid 30s from there, and I'm working off the Kia product offering there for that assumption. Couple of battery sizes rising from late 50s up to 81 kilowatt hour, and potentially 500 to 600 kilometers on a good day. So I don't know if you'll get to actually buy this car until the very end of 2026, if not 27, but it might be one to hold off for. Next up on my list, Škoda Epiq / Cupra Raval. These are the ID.2 size offerings from Cupra and Škoda that they've been talking about for years. Will 2026 be the year that they get the finger out? It will be. So the Raval should go into production from around March of next year. They have spoken about it for years, the €25,000 price point. It's been quite a few years since they mentioned that price. Things have got more expensive, but there's a lot of cars in that segment and size around that money, and they're going to have to be competitive with the car. They've also said, for Cupra at least, it's going to be a 223 brake horsepower version of the Raval. Now, Skoda, they're not shy about having performance versions. They've just announced the 130 Fabia. So we could see the 223 version of the Epiq as well. And it will be 2026 that we'll see these cars. You're talking about 300 to 400 kilometer range, certainly less than 300 miles. And the thing about the car is that it's the small platform from the group, but it still has a decent enough interior. So it's a 2.6 meter wheelbase, which is quite acceptable for that size of car. So yes, 26, the year we'll finally see the Epiq and the Raval from Skoda and Cupra. Also the year that we should see this ID Polo. So originally it was ID.2, then it was ID.2 All, then it was ID.2 GTI. They're all still in the mix, but the name seems to be sticking at Polo and the GTI version. Again, it was the car that they touted as a £22,000, €25,000 car. Will that actually be a thing? I will get to the ID Cross in a few moments. We are talking again, sort of 400 to 500 kilometer range. And the battery size, they haven't really confirmed with that, but couple of options. They obviously have the smaller 58 kilowatt hour, which is a little bit less for net. I'd imagine that would be the top range in this car. But a lot of people would be very interested in the Polo version of this new electric car from Volkswagen. I will be having a look at this car in January in a studio. So it's the Kia EV2. Now I did have it on the channel at the Kia EV Summit way back at the start of this year. It was also a concept car, so it had those rear opening doors. There was the interior that, it looks very nice, like the concept I had for the Hyundai Ioniq 3. But will it actually ever end up like that? So the one I'll see in January will be a lot more akin to what the actual car will be like. So that, again, somewhere between a 50 kilowatt hour, a 70 kilowatt hour battery. There's a couple of options that Kia could use with this. Pricing. Now, they've been very competitive with their PV5. Their EV4 starts from basically €40,000. I'll touch on that in a second. It is out, but it might be one that's not on your radar because it only has literally landed in Ireland the last few weeks. So where will the price of the EV2 sit? You'd imagine certainly a version of it under €30,000, which would be a pretty decent offering. And again, a 400-ish kilometer range car. Again, I don't think you'll actually, the way Kia work, you get a static, which is where you get to look at the car, but you can't drive it at the start of the year. Possibly an international drive towards the end of 2026. And sometimes the way of Kia, and they pretty much do this with the EV4, EV5, they did it. The Ioniq 9, they did it. What else was the EV6? They did it. So it's generally towards the end of the year. So it could be the end of 2026 that we see EV2s on Irish roads. Prices for Renault. Renault 4. Now, it is out in Ireland. It's in showrooms. I don't know if people register one of these cars for their own personal use before 2026. Based on the Renault 5 platform, same battery size, a little bit more expensive. Not massively more expensive, still under the €30,000 mark. Renault were doing some deals they announced a few weeks ago on 0% APR if you go with HP, not PCP, it has to be said. Do wonder, is that because brands are trying to shift the responsibility of the guaranteed future value away from PCP, and if you go HP, whatever the car is worth in a few years is your problem, not the bank's, essentially. But you can get 0% on that. It is a little bit bigger than the Renault 5. The boot is a little bit more interesting. It has this kind of carry-out box that you can throw your kids' football boots and stuff into. The boot is, you know, a little bit bigger. Rear legroom, a little bit bigger, not massively different. Do people remember the old version in enough quantities, or is it just a funky looking car to people that don't remember the original Renault 4? That's the question. But it's here, it's in showrooms, you can go and have a look at it. Now, here was a big car for Toyota, and again, some of these brands, they're you can't shift them from the top 10 sales figures in Ireland. So the RAV4 has been updated. It's now a 100-kilometer range for plug-in hybrid. It's still that petrol 2.5 hybrid. The battery size is now 22.7 kilowatt hour, which is a good size, sort of competing with things like the size of the battery in the Volkswagen Tiguan, which again is a big seller in Ireland. 50 kilowatt DC charging now on the RAV4, same as the VW Group offerings. 46,795. That's the starting price of this new generation of the RAV4, starting from that. That will be in showrooms from early 2026. It's a bit of a facelift, bit of a tweak. Kia Sportage, again, similar size car, has a great wheelbase. It's one of the benchmark cars actually for interior wheelbase for that segment of vehicle. So that's 2680, nearly 2.7 meters wheelbase. There's going to be 3 different trims in Ireland. The price of the Kia Sportage starts from €41,000. That's not for the plug-in hybrid version, just to point out. They will be a little bit more expensive, but there are some tweaks there. I'm going to get to the Nissan Leaf in a second. I have driven it. If you haven't seen the video, it's there, it's available. But there will be a new Nissan Juke happening. Again, this is not going to be a car that will be on Irish roads in 2026, but it might be one you want to wait for. What will they do with the battery size? So you've got 2 different batteries for the Nissan Leaf. The first one into the early 50 kilowatt hour size. You'd imagine they'll feature that. Will they put the larger battery from the Leaf that does apparently over 600 kilometers into the Juke? Time will tell, I suppose. I could see why they wouldn't. I could see why they'd keep the Micra and the Juke, their smaller range electric cars, and the Leaf being their larger range electric car. So don't think we'll see it next year, but it's one to be aware of. Going to be testing this car in early December, the Alpine A390. So we've seen the 290 this year, the kind of more performance-orientated version of the Renault 5. This car, obviously prices haven't been announced yet. The battery size, 89 kilowatt hour battery, 550, 600 kilometers. It's not actually a crossover. It's more of a 5-seater. It's kind of a segment of its own. A very good-looking car, set up to drive well, to be engaging. I'll let you know in December just how engaging that is, but could be one you want to wait for. There's a facelift version of the BYD Atto 3. There's also the Atto 2 electric and super hybrid. Again, I'll be testing that super hybrid later on in November, actually, so keep an eye on the channel or subscribe if you want to find out more about that car when it lands. You're in and around the 60 kilowatt hour battery size. Another one of the Chinese offerings, which have been infiltrating Europe for the last little while. We had Cadillac announced this week as well, but that's obviously not a Chinese electric car, but another newcomer to the market, which is certainly good news. Unfortunately, I was left off the press release about that car for whatever reason, and maybe they just haven't found the channel. Atto 2 and Atto 2 Super Hybrid. I really thought the two would be here by now in Ireland. A lot of these cars are out a long time in China. Another one of that, so again, you might want to hang on for this. It's out in China since earlier on this year. It's the new version of the MG4. Now, don't confuse that with a facelift version of the MG4 we've had in Ireland for the last few years. This is a different model. The battery size they're using is, again, into the low 60s kilowatt hour. So you're always talking a range of about 400 kilometers. I see a lot of MG4s as taxis. I always say it. It's a good sign. If it's good enough for taxi drivers. Another one of those budget-friendly electric cars. Started in the last model at a very competitive price, so I imagine we'll see the same on that. I'm going to be testing this car very, very soon on a private road, I'm told, because it's not for public consumption yet, the Volkswagen ID Cross. I did have a look at a static version of this car at IAA in Munich. This is, again, their compact EV SUV car. Very interesting to see, will the interior that we saw at the launch actually resemble how the car looks in real life? So you might remember we had those little potted plants on the interior, the kind of duffel coat buttons in the center of the seats. Very different to what we've seen from Volkswagen up till now. And it has a frunk, a very, very small frunk, but it has a frunk. Where will that price sit? I'd imagine around the €30,000 for some version of it. Will it creep into the 20s? I don't necessarily see it. They have a couple of options with the battery. They could go 58 kilowatt hour, they could go up to 77 kilowatt hour, or they could surprise us with different battery chemistry that we haven't seen before. They have been quite tight-lipped about the range and the battery size on these cars. Another brand that you might not be too familiar with, but have arrived into Ireland with two cars, are Leapmotor. Next year, they should have 6 cars in total by this time next year. They've also announced that the B10 will be their latest model in Ireland. It's a mid-size SUV, sort of competing with things like the Škoda Epiq. It will start from €33,000, rising up to almost 36 for a 67.1 kilowatt hour battery with over 400 kilometers of range. Something else, again, to add to the mix. We'll see it towards the middle of next year, I'd imagine, in Irish shores and right-hand drive, but they have already had international launches of that car. So it will happen sooner rather than later. And I know for a fact that the Irish importer Gowan Motors have been told to put in their orders for their cars for next year already. So won't be long till we see that one. Bit of a firm favourite. Doesn't sell in huge volumes, but Mazda CX-5, new version coming. It'll actually be in Irish showrooms from probably the end of this year, from €39,965 in Ireland. There's going to be 4 trims here. It's now got a 2.5 petrol engine. It did have a 2-litre. Diesel is gone. What is a little bit underwhelming maybe is the power on paper anyway, 141 brake horsepower. It is 115 millimeters longer than the outgoing model, so a bit more space perhaps in the interior, because I found the rear could be a little bit cramped in that car. Also, the Mazda 6e, unfortunately I couldn't make the international drive of that car a few weeks ago. Ride and drive production starts early next year. They're working out the left-hand drive versions at the moment. When will it arrive into Irish land? I'm going to say towards autumn next year. I think it could be a while off with that one, but might be one you want to wait. The CLA, there's a fully electric version of that coming. Mercedes are about to launch a huge amount of electric cars over the next year or two. Could be worth waiting for. Again, if you're not quite ready to change and you fancy something from Mercedes, better off waiting and seeing how it goes with them, I think. Audi Q3. There is a new model. It's here, it's out. There is a hybrid version coming. Where the Q3 will really kind of stand up is if you want the option of having a plug-in hybrid. And with that in mind, new car sales this year, they're up 3.4% year on year. Not a huge amount, but battery electric vehicles are up over 34%. I do ask the question, I don't mean plug-in hybrid with petrol, I just mean standalone petrol. Will battery electric vehicles overtake the purely petrol segment in 2026? I think that could happen. A new one that could potentially show up, the distributor for Subaru in Ireland has kind of changed hands. The company in the UK that distributes Subaru are also looking after Ireland. So there's a new model coming called the Uncharted. And again, it's part of the alliance that Subaru have with Toyota. So it is based on the CHR Plus. There's an all-wheel drive version of it. It's starting from 165 brake horsepower, obviously not the all-wheel drive version. 58 kilowatt hours to about 70 kilowatt hours, up to 77 kilowatt hours. Couple of different options there that they could use from that alliance with Toyota. And if you do want an all-wheel drive version, there'll be an option. BMW 3 Series Neue Klasse and the iX3 Neue Klasse will be doing international test drives of that car in November. It will probably be March, at least until it arrives in right-hand drive for Ireland. Order books are open. It's low 70s for the iX3. The Neue Klasse, though, will basically be the new, the 3 Series Neue Klasse and the M3. Both will be happening. The price on the 3 Series, no idea. I saw some pictures of it at IA in Munich. They brought it out on stage when they did the launch of the iX3. Did look very nice. For i4 owners, this would kind of be your natural replacement. Will we get it in a launch, a proper launch, and a proper look at the car before Munich? Well, Munich won't be happening next year, but that's sort of timeline into 2026. Definitely a car potentially worth waiting for if you've sort of been a bit disillusioned by the new Audi A4/5 and cars like that. So 3 Series Neue Klasse, probably this time, well, a little bit earlier than this time next year when we get a proper look at that. But the iX3 is happening. There's an Irish launch and it's doing a tour of dealerships at the moment. Low 70s for that car. Seems to be a lot of interest in it. Here's one that Kia Ireland didn't actually do an international launch for, but it is a car that has been announced price-wise. The new Kia EV5. So this is going to slot in above the 4, below the 6, obviously. It's another sort of mid-size SUV from €47,625. If you want to get the GT line, it's 54 grand. 3 different trims in Ireland, a range of up to 530 kilometers. It does look like a baby EV9. You're going to see that car in Kia showrooms before the end of the year. I'll be testing it in the next couple of weeks. Let me come back to the Nissan Leaf. So I've just recently driven it in Copenhagen. It's based on the same platform as things like the Megane E-Tech and the Nissan Ariya, but it has been massively tweaked suspension-wise, how it drives. I really liked it. The price was the big thing. They still haven't announced the price for the new Nissan Leaf. In the UK, it's from €33,000 sterling up to 36 for the bigger battery. So you've got 52 kilowatt hour, 75 kilowatt hour. Could be one worth waiting for, even in terms of waiting for the price. Old Nissan Leaf owners, I think you'll really like it, although it's drastically different. And for people that kind of turned their noses up at the old versions of the Nissan Leaf in terms of how it looked and stuff, it doesn't have CHAdeMO anymore for starters. Definitely could be an interesting car for you, but it really does depend on the price, and they still haven't announced that. More new models from Toyota. Well, this is kind of a tweak, so you can't even get a Yaris petrol anymore. They're all hybrid. The Aygo X hybrid is the same, or Aygo Cross, depending on what way you want to pronounce it. That's from €24,195. The power is up to 116 brake horsepower now. It takes under 10 seconds to get to 100 kilometers now with the upgrade of power, believe it or not. Not a big, huge car perhaps, but certainly for empty nesters and stuff, could be a car of interest. Boot, not massive in it. Anyway, Toyota CHR Plus. So everyone's familiar with the CHR. This is now this is now an electric version of the car. €41,355. Late 30s if you're in the UK. A 77 kilowatt hour battery. And a range of 500 to 600 kilometers. Just one thing to bear in mind, the CHR stands for Coupe High Ride. Clues in the name. Rear hasn't always been massive. The boot space hasn't always been massive. Think of that sloping rear roofline. But what is interesting, the price from is very, very similar to the CHR that we've had in petrol and plug-in hybrid versions for the last 2 years. So I think Toyota have done fairly well with the price there. Honda Prelude, not going to be a big seller. Any of us who grew up in the 90s and 80s will remember this car very, very fondly. 200 brake horsepower, 2-litre petrol. Honda pricing is a little bit mad in Ireland, but depending if they get the price right, it could be an interesting one. Certainly a good-looking car. Nice to have these heritage things coming back. I know this week they've also toyed with the idea of a new version of the S2000, but whether that happens or not is to be seen. The prelude is happening. And will we see it into 2026? I'd imagine we will. They did international test drives of that car a few weeks ago. We weren't invited. Now, it's been a while, but Lexus are bringing out a new version of the ES. It will happen in 2026. It is currently a €60,000-ish car. Whether you want a battery electric version or a hybrid, they've got powertrains for you. 243 brake horsepower in the petrol hybrid. And then the battery electric version, 220 or 338 brake horsepower. If you want the battery electric version, you could potentially have a range of up to 500 kilometers, over 400 miles. Will it scrape in before the end of 2026? I can't say for sure, but it could be one of those cars that is worth hanging on for. Volkswagen T-Roc, going to be test driving this car in the next few weeks. Big seller for VW, big seller for VW in Ireland. Been out since 2017. They sold quite a lot of them actually. There are some hybrid versions that are being renewed from scratch coming. You might want to wait for them. There are 2 petrol mild hybrid versions in the offing from the start. 116 brake horsepower and 115 brake horsepower. What I did like about the T-Cross, and you can have a look at my static review of it if you want. It's on the channel. Just search Volkswagen T-Roc, Nobby, and it will come up. I thought it just looks better. The interior is nicer. It just feels a little bit more upmarket or whatever. The price was always 30-ish, rising to over 40, depending on whether you want Orline and stuff like that. So not necessarily going to be a cheap car. The Golf actually has done quite well. A bit of a comeback this year in terms of sales. Not hugely different to last year, but just it's creeping into the top 10 best-selling models in Ireland. So T-Roc going to be into 2026, but I'd imagine that car, will it arrive into the country before the end of the year? Probably not, but you'll be able to order one. Now, 2 big cars for Volvo into 2026. ES90. The price of that is from €82,000, rising to over €100,000. Volvo are not afraid to ask for lots of dollars for their cars these days. Up to nearly 700 kilometers, certainly around 400 mile mark on the ES90. It does also have 800 volt charging architecture and up to a 106 kilowatt hour battery and a 3.1 wheelbase. So there's going to be a lot of space in that car, but that is going to be a car that we'll see. It's actually gone into production now, so we should definitely get that into early 2026. Next up from Volvo, could be one again worth waiting for. They're going to reveal details about this car on the 21st of January 2026. It's the new, well, not the new because there hasn't been one. It's basically the electric version of the XC60. So the EX60 is going to be the thing. Think of it again as a baby EX90. Minus all the software issues, I would imagine. It could potentially be one of the longest range electric cars Volvo have announced, certainly over 700 kilometers, potentially in the rumor mill there, depending, of course, on what size battery they can squeeze into it. Definitely one waiting for. It's been a big selling car, certainly the plug-in hybrid version of it. So this is a totally new model. It will still have the Thor headlights and all the stuff, and that's why I think it'll be like a squished EX90. So EX60 happening into early 2026, 21st of January. We will see a new Range Rover, an electric Range Rover. The trade-off I've been so often wondering about these cars, they're generally sort of a 3-ton vehicle. When you put a load of batteries into it, what will happen? Now, you could argue, well, the engine won't be in it, so that will offset some of the weight, but I just would be very curious as to how that handles. I doubt they'll mess it up because it's such an iconic vehicle. When exactly will we see it in 2026? Not sure. Again, it could be another one to wait for. And the same is the Audi Q9. This could be one of the last internal combustion engine cars from Audi. They haven't even confirmed it will happen in Europe. Definitely happening in America and China. It's basically a full-on 7-seater version of a car from Audi. So again, a while off, but one to wait for if you want that segment of car. And one thing that I didn't really massively touch on is the Kia EV4. Because it's out, we've done the launches, the international launches and the Irish launches. It's in showrooms. The price of that car is from €40,000. It's front-wheel drive. I enjoy driving it. The fastback version is a little bit unusual looking. I'm going to have that on the channel very, very soon. But my overview, basically, of some of what I think are the biggest potential cars that we will either see early into 2026 on Irish roads, or that you might want to hold off for because it could be the tail end or whatever. And depending on what car you have, you might lose a huge amount of money on it between now and next year. Anyway, if you're thinking of hanging on for some of the models that I've mentioned. I should also point out that if you are struggling with what potential car you want to go with next, what's going to work for you and your family, I do offer a service. If you just search for it or go to my Instagram page at Nobby on Cars, the link is in the bio there. Basically, you can book a 30-minute call with me, a Zoom, and we can chat through your shortlist, what your requirements are, and I'll be able to send you on some details of cars that I think will work for you, your family, your business, whatever it is. But it does take time, takes a bit of research on my behalf when I get your criteria. So I do have to charge for it. It's not very expensive. And it's such a big purchase. I think that really does kind of make it quite reasonable in terms of my time and your time. But if you want to book that, I'll leave the link down below in the video description as well. So basically, it's a one-on-one consultation with you to talk about what might work for your shortlist. If there's anything you feel I've left off the list, feel free to mention it in the comments down below. But my personal evaluation of what I think will be some of the biggest cars heading into 2026 and ones that you might want to consider if you're in the market for a brand new car. If you want to subscribe to the channel, please feel free to do that. And thank you very much for watching the video this far and watching the ads. As I always say, it really does help. And this is truly an independent YouTube channel, so that's all I have to support is the YouTube revenue. So if you have watched the ads, really do appreciate it. And I'll see you very soon.